Okay. All right. So now I'm going to share. And we're going here. Okay. Go. All right. Start. Okay. Now you need to pay attention to where the attendee stuff is because there are people attending. Okay. We hear people, right? Now you need to pay attention to where the attendee stuff is. Oh, so I could do that. Supposed to be that? So how do we say hello to these people?
I can hear you right now.
Oh. Hi. How do we say hello?
I can hear you right now.
Okay. Now share the video. Okay. I still don't see attendees here.
Right there. You can't share and see attendees.
Okay.
This one.
I think so. So we need to start, right?
So we only have 3 people so far.
Okay, hi everybody. It's Lucy here, and I noticed that there are 3 people. We're expecting 9, I believe. So I hope you don't mind waiting a couple more minutes. I'm ready. My throat's starting.
So we have 4.
Can you write a message saying we are waiting for a few more participants and we'll start in 2 minutes? It's okay.
So as I wrote in the chat box. Jose will have to leave this session a little bit early and apologize.
No problem, Jose. All right, we're going to start, and as people join us, that's fine. So welcome to those of you who are here. And because there's so few of us, I'm hoping that we can actually have moments in the webinar where we talk to each other, because we can activate video and voice on your, with you, and I'll be explaining how to do that. But before we do, this is the webinar called Strategies for Engaging Reluctant Teachers. And this is a follow-up from the why is it returning? Okay, hold on. There we go. Oh, you have to hit it here. So you can see we're having a little tricky time here trying to make sure everything's working properly. But you'll see this beautiful slide, and that helps me, and I hope you, focus and relax. So I'm going to breathe 3 times, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And I invite you to join me because it actually will kind of pull us all together and help us get started. So breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. in through the nose and out through the mouth. One more. Okay. So welcome to the webinar. I was not able to visit with you in Boston, but I've heard from many people, particularly the people who ran the retreat and the folks from Leslie, that things went very well, that participants were amazingly wonderful to work with, and from reading your reflections that things were well received. So we wanted to continue the conversation and had promised to do so. So I'm going to share with you some ideas, and I want to hear from you, and then we'll have this dialogue as best as possible, rather than try and do this like a webinar where I just lecture, because that gets really boring, I think. Okay, so here's how this platform works. This is called Zoom, and if you haven't used it before, you can raise your hand, and that would allow us to have a dialogue. So the raise your hand button is where?
It's in the middle on the bottom of your screen.
Okay, middle, bottom of the screen, you'll see an icon that I guess looks like a hand, and you can click on that, and when you do that, we will see that your hand is raised, and then we will make you a panelist temporarily so you can turn on your video and your sound, and then you and I can have a real conversation. And then when we're done, we'll click it off, and if someone else wants to raise their hand, we'll go through the process again. If you don't want to raise your hand, you don't want to talk, but you do want to ask a question or something, you can write in the chat box. And we will be watching the chat box. And I would prefer that we just write to everybody so everyone's in the loop. You have an option to write just to the panelists or just to everybody. So please do everybody, unless there's some serious private thing, and then you would write in the question and answer, right?
No, just to panelists.
Oh, so then you would write just to panelists, and you wouldn't write to everybody. Okay, so right now your sound is muted. We've muted it from our end. And then when you're ready to talk or raise your hand, we'll give you the signal so that you can unmute. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you all are with webinars, but I'm still learning myself. So, okay, so that's that. All right, in case you haven't figured this out, I'm Ruthie West, and I'm a co-author with Tony Cameron, who you all met, who wrote with me The Agents of Change, How Content Coaching Transforms Teaching and Learning. And we've been studying coaching together and separately for more than 2 decades, more like 25 years. James Doolin, you probably heard me talking to somebody and him talking back, is our events manager here at Metamorphosis, and he's holding my hand while we do this webinar so that everything runs smoothly. I think the most important thing is that we talk to each other and that I really address what's on your mind. So even though I've created a bunch of slides, I don't need to use them all, and I can jump around to where you want to go. So the first thing I would like to do is invite you to, whoops, what did I just do? Whoops, something just happened. It's going the wrong way. Okay, I did that, right? So we're going to ask you to respond in the chat box and answer this question. And take your time. We'll just be quiet and wait for a couple of minutes and think about this. What are the reasons that teachers might be reluctant to work with a coach? So please respond to everybody and be as specific as you can. Maybe think of somebody that you've worked with, that you find difficult to work with, and try and understand what is going on here. What is motivating this person or not motivating this person? So I'm going to be quiet for a minute or so and let you write and think. The first couple, the teacher may not want to be outed. Feeling they should know all the answers ahead of time. Great. Okay, so it looks like just about everybody wrote, and I could tell that you're speaking from experience for sure. So I move it this way. Yeah. So you basically named quite a few things that I have on this slide. If I could move this over somehow. Yeah. Okay, so one thing you didn't talk about is the principal. And we're going to talk a little bit about the role of the principal in a coaching initiative because it affects your work enormously. And the research that keeps coming out is basically finding that if the principal is not a partner in this work, you're not going to get very far. So one issue might be that there's issues between the principal and the coaches, or the principals and the teachers. That's number one. Oh, that was to get us to stop. That was to get us to stop writing. Okay. The second thing is that they might mistrust the coach. Like if you were a teacher last year and now you're a coach this year in the same school, that often causes problems, mistrust, jealousy, and so forth. Or if you have a history with a particular teacher, that will be at play. If you're coming in as an outsider, building trust is something that's talked about often in coaching. So what we want to think about is, we will think about in a minute, is, how do you build trust and what do we mean by trust? Because we use the word trust a lot when we're talking with each other and about coaching, but I'm not sure we always have defined trust well. Then there's also ignorance of the coaching process, which some of you did speak to, like maybe they don't know what's supposed to happen with a coach or why it's happening. And often that relates back to how coaching was introduced to the teachers. And oftentimes it wasn't introduced very well. So the principal kind of said, well, we're going to have a coach, and if you want, you can volunteer. Or we're going to have a coach, and I'm going to have the coach come to your classroom, and I want you to work with her, whatever. And they might also believe that the purpose of coaching is to fix them in some way, or to, because they're not doing a good job, which you also spoke to. So they may have beliefs about coaching as well as beliefs about teacher development. And I think some of you raised those issues. What I mean by that is coaching is only for the inept and the newbies. And in fact, I believe coaching's for everybody. I have a coach. Everybody at Metamorphosis has a coach. We all coach each other and so forth. But in schools, coaching is in many places still new, or it's not new, but it was not introduced well and it's not really doing the job. The principal may actually have you only working with new teachers or people who they are wanting to support, rather than understanding a bigger picture point of view. I spoke about poor launches. Sometimes, and this was interesting, I didn't learn this until maybe a few years ago, when I asked the teacher, do you have a history with coaching? And found out that they did have a history with coaching and they didn't have a great experience. So they're already coming in distrusting coaching because of previous experience, which I would not have known about if I hadn't asked. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. They maybe feel insecure and unsafe, which you also speak about, or afraid to be criticized. So this notion of safety, psychological safety, permission to make mistakes, not only permission from you, but internalized permission. And lots of times what looks like a lack of willingness is actually hiding the fact that I don't know how, or I don't understand my content, and I don't want you to know that because I'm ashamed of it, or I feel like I'll be, written up, or whatever the teacher's fear is. Okay, how come this isn't moving again? Okay, there we go. So successful coaching depends on many things, and I'm sure you're figuring this out if you haven't already. One is school culture and history. So the school culture, the adult culture, If it's not a learning culture, coaching is very difficult to implement, because most school cultures, even to this day, when coaching has been now around for 25 years or more, is that, I have my own classroom, I work by myself. Yes, we meet once a week for an hour, but what we do in those meetings can be superficial. It can be, all right, we'll plan a lesson together and I'll do it my way anyway, or it could have a lot of stuff going on. So the culture is important, and analyzing the culture from a coaching perspective is part of the work. So there also might be a history where coaching was pushed on people and now they're trying to undo that, but it's still lingering. And then we talked about the principal relationship to the coach, but what about the principal relationship with the faculty? So is there trust between them? Do they like the principal? Do they have similar teaching philosophies? What style leader is that principal, and how is it impacting the particular teachers that you're working with? And then the principal relationship with the coach is critical. And at some point later on, we can talk more about that, because I've written a lot about it. I can send you an article if you like. But the principal-coach relationship is critical. And it should be a partnership, not a one-up, one-down relationship. Now, if you report to the principal, she's your supervisor, then you already have a one-up, one-down relationship. So establishing a more of an equal playing field is going to be part of the work. So, and we talked about whether you were a former teacher in the school or you're coming in from the outside, and each of those have different issues that come up in relation to building relationships. Teacher mindsets, teacher belief systems, teacher willingness to learn, and their fear levels. All of those things are things that content coaches may not be listening for because they're so busy trying to get the lesson to be a good lesson. But you're in the long run and in the bigger picture, we have to think more about and listen more for teacher mindsets. What is their mindset? Do we know their own math history? Have we kind of poked around and probed to try to find out who is this teacher? What do they care about? What do they bring to the table? And so forth. And here, beliefs about teaching, beliefs about students, beliefs about parents, beliefs about what's possible, what's not possible, how things are supposed to be done, etc. The more you listen to what a teacher thinks and believes, the more you can find an entryway to open up dialogue, because the two of you are probably not going to be on the same page, even if you're fairly much on the same page. There are going to be places where you have differences, and it's the exploration of those differences that matter. And we kind of talked about the others. So the last thing I want to discuss is the coach's disposition, credibility, reliability, and capacity to trust. The history you have with that, with the school and with the teacher. So I'm going to get into this in a minute, but I just spoke for about 5 minutes, and I would like to hear from you. So you could either raise your hand because you want to speak to something I said or ask a question, or you could write something in the chat box and I will respond. So I'm looking to see, I'll take a minute. I just said a bunch of stuff. It may be all very familiar to you, or there may be something I said that you have a question about, or you disagree with, or you want more information about. So take a moment and either raise your hand or chat box. I can't read that. It's too... Coaching coaches. Okay. So nobody's raised their hand or written anything new. So I'm going to move on. Now, Julie. Okay, there we go. What did we get? I'm really struck by the notion of analyzing the culture. Whoa, I just lost that. Got to go back. Oh, analyzing the culture of coaching in a school. I have only ever walked into a building that already has coaching. Okay. Speak more about coaches' capacity to trust. I'm still writing. Okay, great. I am thinking about all of these variables and wondering which to address first. Okay. I'm going to speak more about, is that Sherry? Where was Sherry? Sherry. I am going to speak more about the coach's capacity to trust, so I'm going to hold on that question for a minute. And okay, and then this notion of being evaluated versus learning to grow together. Let's start with Julie's question about coaching coaches. She wants to talk a little bit more about that. I think that's what we're doing right now. We're coaching each other, right? So coaching coaches. I will be doing some of that here. And I think that part of that has to do with really thinking together about the stance and disposition of a coach. And then the levels of learning that coaches have to go through and the humility and vulnerability that coaches have to be willing to express and allow in coaching sessions in order to allow it to be safe for other people to do that. So we'll be talking about creating psychological safety.
We do have a hand raised too.
Okay, a hand raise. Good. I want to talk to somebody. So let's do that. Okay, this takes a minute, so just hang in, everybody. Okay, so it's, I'm going to, did you make him a participant? Yeah. Allowed to talk?
So she would have to press. Yeah.
Unmuted, right?
Okay, so you have to unmute yourself.
Yep.
And you have to put on your video. There you are. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, can you make your sound a little louder because I can't hear you?
Louder. Yeah.
Put your sound up.
That's no. Talk. Can you say something?
I can say something. Hello.
Oh, that's way too loud. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can do it from here. Sorry.
It's okay. We're learning. We're all learning. You'll be our first guinea pig.
Yeah. Sound. Here we go. All right. Output volume all the way up. Alert volume all the way up.
Okay. Now I can hear you, I think.
Now you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah. So just speak louder and we'll be able to hear you. So okay. What would you like to speak about?
Well, I was just, I was writing about how I really felt like I've had 3 coaching jobs. When I first started coaching, I was brand new to the school. I came in as a middle school math coach, and coaching was new to everybody. In my second coaching role, I was an instructional coach, not just math, and coaching wasn't new, but it was the role was new to me because I coached everyone. It was instructional coaching. So I coached the phys ed teacher, I coached the art teacher, I coached everybody. My third coaching role is back to math coaching, and I'm in an elementary school. And again, the coaching role was already kind of established, and I just kind of came in there. So this notion of like getting started and trying to like develop trust, that's been huge for me, because I know that I know from my work that working with people really comes from like this, it's a give and take. I'm learning just as much as they are.
Right.
But then I was really struck with what you said about analyzing the culture of coaching being part of the work. I never saw it as being part of the work so much as like, it was just, like I just kind of jumped in. And, whatever I got. But this whole notion of taking a step back and saying, wait a minute, what have these guys been going through before I got here? There's just so much work to do.
Yeah. So
it's hard to think about the water as being the fish swimming in it.
So let's talk about this, because I think one of the big things that happens with coaches is that we don't remember to look at the big picture. We're so focused on getting through this lesson or coaching this teacher or whatever, that we don't really pay attention to the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And the bigger picture is the culture of the school and how people interact as adults in that school. And also the history. So if they've been coached before and you come in, are you supposed to do what the other person did? Or can you renegotiate what coaching is? What is their history with coaching? Did they find it useful and they're eager to meet with you, but they're expecting you to be the other person?
Right.
And there's so much stuff to talk about that we often fluff over or don't address.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, there are gaps that start to build between you and the teacher because you're operating under assumptions that may or may not be true. Okay. And so one of the things I have learned over the years for myself is that first time I meet somebody and times after that, I need to be really curious about them, right, and what they're doing and why they're doing it and why they think that and what they believe, even more so than getting through a lesson. Because until I really get a handle on where this person is coming from and what they think and how close we are in our points of view, we could be on two different planets.
Right.
And so now I'm coaching you and doing a lesson the way I think it should be done, but I've missed the fact that you don't believe that that's good, effective math teaching.
Right.
So you're going to yes me to death and not do anything that I suggest. And then I'm going to get mad at you because you're not doing it right. I suggest. So that's the human dynamic. Mm-hmm. And the principal plays a key role here because who are you supposed to coach and why? What is the purpose of coaching those people? What is the theory of action for how the whole school is going to develop and where coaching fits into that? And rarely does a principal have a strategy beyond, I want you to help this person because she's not doing well, and I want you to help this person because they're new. So they perpetuate the myth that coaching is for newbies and people who are not doing well. And that just adds to other teachers' beliefs that that's what it's all about. So we have to be proactive. Okay, so thank you so much for talking. No, it looks like someone else is wanting to talk, so we're going to undo you and add, I think it's Addis.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I don't know if you can see anything.
Not yet. You have to click your...
Give me 1 second.
1 second. Okay, there we go. And now click your video and your sound.
Wow, okay.
And now your video.
You can see me.
I can't see you. You have to click your video icon on the bottom left of the screen.
Oh, yep, there we go.
There you go. Now I can see
Hi.
you. There you are. Hi.
Sorry, it's a little fuzzy. And it's quite late here. It's like 10 o'clock now, but it's okay. I'm glad I joined.
10 o'clock. Where are you?
I'm in Cameroon.
Wow. I hope you're having fun in Cameroon.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So my question kind of goes with the last part of what you all were talking about, because I don't think there's any culture of coaching, even from the principal. There's not really a culture of feedback in any way. So I'm in a small independent school. It's an American school. And I'm not feeling any support from my principal. That my direct kind of supervisor on the coaching front is not the person who kind of approved my idea to like move further into coaching, because my role is more of a learning support role technically. And I wanted to kind of branch out, but I don't.
So somebody hired you who's not the principal, and the principal may not support what you're doing. Is that right?
Well, I don't know where his head is at, but his actions are not supporting.
Okay, so you're
what I would hope my actions to be.
Exactly. So you're talking about hoping for support when you're getting something else and not being clear what this person believes about your role or how he might be of support. So that requires a crucial conversation, which we'll talk about in a little while. But I'm going to advocate for coaches to be proactive with principals. So I don't know what your relationship is, but it sounds like you're not loving how he's treating you or how he's treating the work.
Well, it's more kind of just like a yes, sure, do whatever you need to do. But like in the ways of building structures around coaching, like arranging for PD so I can kind of launch into for everyone, here's what coaching will look like this year. He's kind of been like, yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But without actually like getting FaceTime that I can't really structure in without doing 20 different individual meetings, which
So
isn't
here's
a good
one-
use of time. You know, I don't,
So you have, here's what I mean by being proactive.
yeah.
We're going to talk about listening, right? So you have to become curious about him. Find out what he thinks coaching is. Find out who he thinks should be coached and why. Find out whether he even believes in coaching. What does he think the purpose of it is? Find out what he thinks your role is. What does he actually think you should be doing versus what you are doing? In other words, you have to explore, probe in a gentle, kind way who he is, what he cares about, and so forth in relation to what you're trying to do. And once you start to establish that, once you start to get a better sense of what he wants and what he believes in, which he probably hasn't thought very deeply about.
Yeah.
Your questions, your kind, gentle questions, may I ask you a question I'm wondering about, like friendly and gentle, will help him think about it. And once you get some information, then you can become proactive. So then you can say, well, I noticed that, coming up in 2 weeks, there's a staff meeting. I'm making this up, and can I have half an hour? I would really like to have a conversation with the whole team. Let's find out what everybody thinks coaching should be about. And one of the things you might want to think about is you might want to start a coaching initiative, but coaching is an act. It's a process. It's not a person. So you don't have to be the only coach in the school. People can coach each other. If you're trying to build a culture of coaching, a culture of helping each other, then it's not all about you. It's about, okay, who wants to help who, or who can I work with? And also it could be that you put yourself in a vulnerable position. You say, I don't have a class this year, so I'd love to work with somebody where I could play with some new ideas that I have, and I would love to plan with somebody. And so you don't put yourself one up. You go like this, we're equal. And I want to play with you, and I'm going to be vulnerable right alongside you. And let's have some fun. Let's really get better at something. And I would like to work on getting kids to talk more. I would like to go deeper in math, or whatever it is you want to do, and see who wants to play with you. Because until you get clear across the system, like what is it that we would benefit from in terms of talking to each other and thinking about lessons together, people are less interested in coaching, or they don't know what you're talking about, or they see you as like, who does she think she is? She could teach me, you see? So you don't want to set that up. You want to set up, we're all in this together, and there are things we could learn, but you got to start with the principle. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
All right. So can I scoot out now and we'll go back into the webinar? Okay. So
should I do something? Should I press something?
No, you don't have to do anything. Okay, there we go. You're back as a participant now. Okay, how do I get rid of that? Unknown caller. Okay, sorry about that. That was my lovely phone. Okay, so we're going to talk about trust because that came up and it's going to lead into some of the other things. One of the things that I have noticed over the years, and I've worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of coaches, maybe hundreds and hundreds. The reluctant teacher may not trust you or the principal or coaching. That might be one thing that's underneath what's going on. You may not trust that teacher or that principal. And you might not trust their judgment, the way they think about teaching, their motives, their willingness. So first, we're going to talk about you and trust and what it means to be a coach willing to develop trust in which they take the first step. So I'm going to redefine trust a little bit, and we're going to play with this definition. And if you would like, I can send you an article that goes into more detail about this. It's a short article, but I've been working with it now for about, 5 or 6 years. I like it a lot because it changed the way I thought about trust. And I think that when people talk about trust as coaches, the thing that worries me the most is they spend a whole year building trust. And I'm like, what? You don't have time to do that. You've got to build trust like this. So how do you do it? So we need to redefine it. Trust is the emotion that allows us to coordinate actions with others. In other words, It's what allows us to get the job done. But to get the job done means we have to collaborate. We have to be able to work together, right? This means that instead of judging people from a moral perspective, this person doesn't care, they're not great teachers, they're lazy, they're this, they're that, whatever our judgments are, I guarantee you those judges are getting in the way. That I call that the story I'm telling myself. And one thing we have to do as coaches is change the story. So one way to start to change the story is actually to start talking about trust with anyone you coach or anyone you work with, rather than avoid talking about it. We'll get to that, thanks. Okay, so I go like this. All right, so the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. Which is really hard because like there may be evidence that you're not sure you can trust them. But how do you become sure? What do you do? That's through negotiation and experience and learning to have conversations that really put the true issues on the table without jeopardizing them. I'll leave this slide in here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it, but you can take a moment and just read it because these are the things that get in the way. So once you don't have trust in a school, and if you're trying to analyze the culture in a school, if you see any of these things going on, there's a low trust issue going on. Whether it's between individuals or between the teachers and the administration, between the coach and the teachers, whatever. If these things are happening or you're doing any of these things, there's low trust. So you can start to think about it by actions that people take. So I think it was Tamisha said, you know, or maybe it was Addis, somebody said their principal's actions were what were worrying her more than what he says. Well, actions speak much louder than words, right? So what actions taken or not taken by an administrator undermine your trust? What makes you say, whoa, I don't know if I can trust this person? What actions taken or not taken by colleagues undermine your trust? For example, if you hear somebody talking about you behind your back, and they didn't talk about you directly to your face, that probably undermines your trust. What about students? And vice versa. What about up? You know, like teachers behaving in certain ways that undermines a principal's trust or undermines a student's trust. So trust is a two-way street, but somebody has to start trusting and start changing the story. So trust is domain specific. So let's give an example. If I have a friend who's a colleague and now I'm coaching in that situation, that friend and I might trust each other on a personal level. We might go out on, on Fridays or do whatever. And in that domain, we're very trusting. But when it comes to teaching, we may have different points of view. We may not plan together, so I don't really know what you think. So there might not be as much trust. It's situational and based on standards and norms. That's why you want to look at what's going on in that school. What are the norms in that school? How do adults treat each other? Who's cliquey with who? How do those cliques treat the other cliques and so forth? And then it's a skill. And this is the part that people like, oh, what? What do you mean trust is a skill? You can develop trust by practicing certain kinds of things and certain kinds of awareness. Basically, it's a risk assessment, and I'll get a little bit more into that, and then we'll have some more talk. There are three key elements to knowing whether you can trust somebody. Their sincerity. So are they really saying, yes, I want to do this thing, I agree with you, or are they yesing you to death? Or are they avoiding being sincere? So judging whether someone is sincere or checking that out is number one. And this works in two ways. The teacher has to know how sincere you are. Reliable. If the person says they're going to do something, will they do it? Are they reliable? If you say, I'm going to come in your class and I'm going to do this and this with you, are you reliable? And the third part is you might be sincere and in general reliable, but you might not have the competence to do what you say. So some teachers are not doing what you're suggesting because they're not capable. Some teachers are not doing what you're suggesting because they're not reliable. They weren't sincere to begin with. Analyzing that is a critical life skill to develop. Because your job is, if you could figure that out and you could suss it out with the teacher, then you can focus in the right direction. Maybe you have to build a content knowledge. Maybe you have to build management skills. Maybe you have to build, trust with kids. Like, what is it that is they're not so good at that's getting in the way? So it might be a competence issue. Or what are the habits that they live that really don't work? They don't come prepared, or they don't give much thought to what they're doing, or things like that. So, and analyzing that matters. The interesting thing is once you start to talk to people about trust, you already start to produce trust. It's weird. I've done this over and over and I'm like, whoa, that was interesting. So trust the trust, right? Trust people enough to talk about it. That means you have to be as transparent as you can be about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you care about. Your word has to be valuable. I have to trust your word. That's your reliability. That's your sincerity. And then you need to be willing to share your beliefs and what you value, because it's what we believe and what we value that's driving what we do. It's not what we do that's driving our beliefs and value. It's the other way around. And most of the time, we're not aware of what other people actually value, or what they think is important, or what they believe, or where that belief came from. And sometimes we're not aware of our own. Like, where did that belief come from? So find out, first of all, what do you value? What do you care about? What do you want? What do you think coaching should look like? And then before you start telling everybody what you think, ask, what do they care about? Why would they might want to be engaged in coaching? What do they value? What are they working on? Like that kind of thing, to get a sense of who these folks are and how you can best work with them. And we skip a lot of that because we're so busy working on the academics, or we're so busy getting through the lesson that we don't slow down enough as coaches to get to know the coachee in ways that help the coaching. Okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to read what you've written, and I'm going to give you a chance to respond to anything I've said. Yeah, okay. I want to talk about coaching. I did that. This is what I didn't do, right?
And there's a follow-up.
No, she can't. Who is that?
So this is Addis.
Oh, it's Addis again. Well, Addis and Tamisha are jumping in good.
Mm-hmm.
How long is too long, and how short is too short to develop trust? Okay. All right. So Addis and Tamisha, thank you for your participation. Everybody else, jump in there. We got a few other people, so please speak up. Don't be afraid, or just chat. Put something in the chat box. But I'm going to address the questions that are coming up, so they're visible to everyone. One came up about urgency. Students need to perform well. Yes, that's true. But if teachers are not thinking deeply and growing, their students are not going to get any better. So it's a process, content, results kind of thing. People always want results. Results. I just got off the phone with a charter school. The principal is like, my board wants results, but this is what's going on, and our teachers don't understand this, and this. Okay, we need to do both simultaneously. You cannot let results just sit over here while we build these friendly relationships. You can still plan a lesson. You can still look at a unit. You can still teach content. You can do all those things while you're building trust. In fact, that's what gets you credibility, reliability, and sincerity. because you're doing it. You're not talking about doing it. What do I mean by doing it is I'm saying, okay, what does this teacher want to work on? Roll up your sleeves and get to work. We'll talk about goals and other things later, but if it's something that's worthy and you agree that it's a mutual purpose you can both work on, then work on it. Get started. When trust goes a little bit south, when things don't feel so safe, stop and address what's going on. I noticed that you seem to all of a sudden feel like you look like you maybe weren't agreeing with me, or I noticed that you sort of stopped talking. Can you help me know what's going on so we can get back to safety, to trust, right? You have to be that tuned in to the other person. And that takes practice. And I'm not always so great at it, but I think that that's something we have to think about. So you're working simultaneously on improving practice while you're building trust. You don't build trust for umpteen, sessions and then work on practice. It has to be practical. The person has to say, this really helped me. Oh, look at Johnny. He did something today that he's never done before. That was terrific. He actually focused. He actually did the task. Whatever it is, you want to ferret out what the benefits are of the work you're doing together so that you can continue. So that's one. And somebody says, how long is too long? How long is too short? I don't know. It depends. It depends on the person. It depends on you. It depends on how skillful you guys are. It depends on what the culture in the school is. If you walk into a school where the culture is not a learning culture among adults, it'll take you longer. If you walk into a school that's humming and the teachers are like, yeah, you're here, let's get to work, it'll take you less time. With each individual, who are you feeling connected to? Who are you getting started with? Who's like having success? Less time. Who's kind of fighting you every step of the way? More time, right? So I can't give you an answer to that. There was something about go before Cambridge, go back. There's so many teachers. That's what I mean about strategy and developing a relationship with the principal. Some principals say, I want you to work with all the teachers. Well, if there's 50 teachers in the school, that's not a great idea. And some principals say, work with whoever you want, whoever wants to work with you. That's not a great idea. Some people say, go find people to work with. Again, there's no strategy here. There's no long-term thinking. There's just like, okay, whatever. No. So what we have to do as coaches is have some kind of long-term view about 2 or 3 years from now. What would it look like if I was successful? And who would be in teacher leadership positions, not necessarily formal ones, but have emerged as lead teachers, who are my companions in this work, my allies, if you want. That's a hard thing because most of us are not trained. When we go from teaching to coaching, we're generally not trained as leaders, but coaches are leaders. And coaches need to learn. If you're going to be a change agent, you need to look at a system and a situation and pretend that you ran the show. And if you ran the show, you have to start to think about, well, what would I do? What would make this successful? What do I think would be a good first step? Where do I want to go? Who are the teachers that are going to move their practice fastest so we could get some success going? In other words, you become a strategic thinker. And if you go back to Agents of Change, I think it's chapter 2. I talk a lot about that in that book. It's a strategy to develop strength from strength. And then the more you do that, the more strength there is, and the more it's exactly my philosophy of teaching. You don't teach from deficit, you teach from strength. You coach from strength. You make leadership decisions from what's working in the school and how you build on it. So you have to select teachers carefully. And that is done in conjunction with the principal. But the principal may not think about this as much as you do. So you could go to the principal, find out why she wants you to work with this one, that one, and the other one, listen, and come back with a negotiated point of view. Like, I hear what you're saying. I agree that Miss, X and Miss Y and Miss Z could use some help. And I think I could help them. I think we could do that. However, wouldn't it be great if we could get a couple of classrooms like really cooking so that Miss X, Y, and Z have somewhere to go to see this stuff in action, because they really don't understand what we're talking about. And maybe that would really help. So now I'm proactive. I'm seeding ideas with the principal. And the principal's like, well, okay, who would that be? Well, who do you think's the best math teacher in the school, or, really good teacher? Maybe we could go visit her together and talk about what you think is so great about it. Maybe we could get our lenses aligned so we could think, oh, we both agree that Miss Brown is terrific. Let's name what it is she's doing that's terrific. Now we can think about the other three and how we move them in that direction. So teacher selection, again, I speak about it in the book, is critical. And if you want to be somewhere in 3 years, you have to start strategically and be transparent in your thinking. Anything else?
A few more things.
Okay. Cambridge with an interim coach situation, wondering how to navigate this and support this coach. Interim coach meaning I'm only here for a short while. I mean, I don't think there's much different to do about it, except you're not going to get as far, right? Because the person has to be willing to act like they're going to be there forever and they're totally dedicated to the work. And then they use this opportunity to work with some people, to work with the principal, to try to create a culture, whatever it is you're working on, as if they were forever. When you get the person who's going to be forever, or hopefully for a few years, right? That interim coach needs to be tapped to share with the new person what went on, what the issues are, what they worked on, where they ran into problems or not. I mean, to me, I think it's helpful to get that background information. The only caveat is it could backfire, because if the interim coach did not have success, they might end up blaming it on the school or the principal or the teachers or something, which would color what the new coach thinks is going to happen. And we don't want to start with a story that this is the other people are the problem. You never want to start with that story. So that's a little caveat around that. But yeah, sometimes you have interim coaches. I know districts that have coaches that work for 3 years out of the classroom as a coach, and then they go back in the classroom. There are lots of ways to do this. Actually, when we go back after coaching for a couple of years, we're usually much better teachers. So I'm not sure what else. If you want to clarify, I'm happy to say more or move on. What else? Am I saying? I know we had this role play during the session, but still having trouble setting working meetings with colleagues. Okay. Okay, so how many conversations have you had with your friendly colleagues in terms of actually setting up meetings and addressing the fact that they're not being reliable? Maybe they're not being sincere. Maybe they're not valuing you. You really have to have that conversation and not just here's the thing. If you have the same conversation more than once, you're having the wrong conversation. Because a successful, crucial conversation changes something. To come to a real agreement and live by it might mean 2 or 3 conversations, because sometimes it's hard with friends to be honest, to have candor. Yeah, I don't have time for this is typical. So who's asking, why do you want to work with that person, number one? Is the principal demanding it? If the principal is demanding that you work with that person, then you need a 3-way conversation. You, the principal, and the teacher, because she doesn't have time for this. See, in an ideal world, in Lucy West's ideal world, all coaching situations would start with a 3-way conversation. The principal, the coach, and the teacher would sit down and talk about, what are we going to work on? Why are we using coaching as a tool? What are we trying to accomplish? How are we going to know we're succeeding? What happens if things don't go right? What happens if somebody, disappoints in one way or another? That conversation lays the groundwork. which leaves the door open between the coach and the principal, and the principal and the teacher. So this whole notion that we don't talk to principals about what's going on in coaching, I do not agree with. It is the principal's responsibility to make sure effective teaching is going on in every classroom. She is the supervisor of that teacher and in some cases of the coach. In what other industry is it that the supervisor doesn't know what's going on with the supervisee? When is that a lack of confidentiality? I mean, what is that? That's an old historic way of operating in old-fashioned schools. So if we want to develop trust, we have to develop it across the board with everybody. We have to talk about what we're going to share, what we're not going to share, why we're sharing it, what we're trying to accomplish. I know this sounds crazy, and most of you are like, I can't do that with my principal. Well, maybe you could figure out a way to get a step in that direction. And it's not to punish the teacher that you're pulling in the principal. You're trying to solve something. The principal says work with her. She says I don't have time. And you're going back and forth and wasting a lot of your time. You could go to the principal first, and you could go to the teacher first and say, the principal asked me to work with you. You say you don't have time. How do you want to resolve this? Should we talk to the principal together? I'm happy to do that because I have 50 other people to work with. And I want to be friends. We're friends. So I don't want to ruin that. You know, be honest, be candid, be direct. Don't beat around the bush. But make sure you find out the other person's story. What are they thinking? What are they believing? What are they doing? Because that's probably where you're telling yourself stories. And you have to check out your story and you have to check out their story. Okay?
I'll follow up from Julie.
Usually I get coach is on maternity leave, so likely only a few months. Okay. Julie, there's nothing really major to do about that. Do the best you can. It's a temporary situation. You do the best you can. You train the coach the best you can. The coach develops relationships the best they can. Anything I'm saying here would apply to an interim coach as well as anybody else. Just know that they're not going to be there long. And you know what? Next year something will change and they might be back in a coaching role. So anything you do to develop that person is worth it. And anything you do to develop that person, they may become a lead teacher in that school. And that's just another way of being collaborative and maybe planning lessons together and so forth. So again, I'm going to say it's not the person. It's not just one person. Coaching is a relationship. It's about relationships. It's about developing leadership capacity among teachers. It's about getting people to focus on what really matters, which most of the time is lesson design. And then implementation, and then reflection. Like that lesson design's not good, that's where you work. And when a person like this who's on an interim and then goes back into the classroom or something like that, they're going to be better at lesson design. So that's a good thing. May not be what you want, but I'm not really sure what else to say about that. Okay, anything else, James? No, okay. So here's something to realize. Everybody is dependent on somebody to get their job done. You're dependent on your principal and your colleagues. And the teachers are dependent on their students and their colleagues and their principal. And in cases when they work with you, on you. Now, when you start to realize that you're dependent on other people, it kind of feels uncomfortable. But the truth is, we're interdependent. We cannot do anything without the support of other people and get something accomplished. We don't live in a vacuum. We just had a meeting at our company yesterday where our support team and our leadership team sat together and we talked about this. We are interdependent. When the leadership team makes a decision, it affects everybody on the team. And if somebody on the support team makes a decision, then it affects the leadership team. So people need to understand that. And when we start to understand that, we're both vulnerable. If we care, we're both vulnerable, which is actually a healthy place to be. So people don't like to feel vulnerable, which is why we work on safety. And the way you can develop safety is by exposing your own ignorance, incompetence, doubts, and fears. That doesn't mean you go around saying, poor me, and any of that. You're not complaining, you're sharing. So I wanted to show you a quick little video because this is how first teacher, never met her before. I'm working with her with a bunch of teachers watching, but I'm attempting to establish safety and to give her permission to take risks. And I'd like to show you, it's just a minute and a half, but this is just one example, but I want you to think about this notion of establishing and maintaining safety so people are willing to take risks. And you're the risk taker, the first, most vulnerable risk taker. Okay, so how do I do this, James? Okay. Go to the video. All right, and we want to go full screen.
No, that's fine.
It is, okay. Whoops, how did I get out of there? Okay, so I'm going to turn the video on, and I'll just give you a quick, like, what's going on here. The person to my left, the person to my right in the picture, or to our left, sitting next to me, is the teacher. The person in the red shirt is the coach. All the people sitting around are teachers in the school, and the woman standing up is the principal. And we're doing a kind of mini lesson study type thing. It's not really a lesson study, but we're working together and we're fishbowling the coaching session. First time I'm meeting this teacher, and you'll see how I start. So we're going to start. Anything you missed was just the other teachers introducing themselves.
Okay, well, I'm Ruthie West, and I know Val and Amanda. Twisted to do this.
Yeah, I volunteered wholeheartedly. I bet you something like that.
It's very brave, actually, and I appreciate it. And this is a conversation. I have not come here saying you must do this. We're going to decide together, and then we're going to go in there and figure out what's happening. So I will ask a lot of questions. They're not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because it helps us think together. And so none of these are taken personally. They're just like, let's think about this stuff together. This is not a unit I've personally taught. It's a unit I'm familiar with. So we'll have to think about some things together. When we plan a lesson, we always do the math first. So we're inviting you to do the math. And we're actually going to have you do the math from the day before, and possibly the math we're going to do today. And then we're going to decide whether to skip day 4 and go to 6 or to keep it. Okay, all right?
Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you. And I spoke a lot. I tried to answer some of your questions. So if anybody would like to write in the chat box or would like to talk, again, raise your hand or write in the box. I will answer the question about visiting classrooms in a minute. Yep. Yeah. So what I did, and you're picking up on some of the moves that I made, I'm framing the work so we're equal. It's called creating equilibrium. It's equilibrating the power. Clearly, I'm the expert flying in, and I have a lot of power. She has to see that she also has power, and we're in this together. And I don't know the answers, and actually, I really didn't know the answers. We were doing the math together, trying to figure it out. So to me, that's the stance of a good coach. Like, I'm here to help you. See, I'm here to help you already puts you in a 1-up. I'm here to learn with you. I'm trying to figure this stuff out myself. not sure about this thing or that thing. I need to know more about your class. You know, I ask 1,000 questions because I really want to know what you think. Like whatever it is that you can do to create psychological safety, to invite the other person in, to lay out what the work is like, those things matter. And, you know, that was just 1 minute. I could show you clip after clip after clip. They all sound different, but my intention is always the same. In one clip I was looking at, but it was too long to show you, I actually start by getting to work, and then I stop, like 3 minutes in, I say, let's stop. We need to back up. Like, let's get to know each other, because it's the same thing. I'm working with a person I haven't really worked with before. I've never seen him teach. There's a billion people watching us, and I just backed up. I said, let's back up. Let's talk about what we care about. Let's talk about this and that. And that relaxed him and relaxed me, and then we were able to work. So I think framing the work we're doing and talking to people about how we feel and how we want to learn something is way better than going in with some great idea about a lesson. Was there anything else that people raised? Oh, to go back to, what was that question somebody asked? Oh, visiting classrooms. So visiting classrooms is the same deal. If you're having a hard, first of all, I don't visit somebody's classroom unless I've had a conversation with them. And the conversation is like an exploratory conversation. What would you like me to notice? So for example, when we start coaching and we're under a metamorphosis contract, the first day is always a getting to know you day. And it's not a wasted day, but we're not really coaching. We're laying the groundwork. So we start with a meeting with either one teacher or a group of teachers on a grade level. And we start talking, we start finding out their history with coaching. We find out what they love about their jobs. We find out, you know, how their kids are doing, what their challenges are. We just talk for a little while. And then we start to hone in on, so let's talk about coaching. What are we doing as coaches? What is the relationship that we have? And a lot of what I was talking about there is, you know, you're opening up your practice. So what does that feel like? What do you need to feel safe doing that? Is it okay if other colleagues are there? Is it just you and me? Like, where are we when we're starting? That's number one. The other thing is that you have to start with people who want. So here's another way you could go about it if you're having trouble getting into classrooms. You find teachers who will allow you to teach in their classroom. So I would say to a teacher, I'm working on discourse. As a matter of fact, I did that in that district that we were just looking at. My book, Adding Talk to the Equation, was filmed in that district. And in some cases I taught because I was working on certain talk moves and I wanted to have an opportunity to illustrate them in a class. So I would say to the teacher, look, you know, I know it's your class and we're trying to do this, that, but what would you be okay if I taught the launch or if I got the conversation going or whatever, so that I could try out some things? That makes me vulnerable. That puts her in a one-up position. That allows her to say that shows her that I know I have stuff to learn. Teaching is complex. We never stop having to learn. So that's another way in. It has to be sincere. It's not a BS kind of thing, but I do have things to learn. And I did learn stuff by going in and teaching those classes. And some of it's in my book. So I hope that answers your question. I left this PowerPoint up a lot. It's just basically saying if you don't have trust in the school, you're not going to improve the student achievement. So the second part here is really critical. No chance of improving in either reading or mathematics with weak trust, chronically weak trust. I mean, I think if you've worked in schools as long as I have, you know you don't even need research to prove that. It just is true. So it's important to work on the trust, but it's not a kind of thing that I'll bring you your coffee, I'll make copies for you, I'll get you some resources. That's all fluff. That doesn't mean you never bring somebody a cup of coffee or you never make copies for somebody. But if that's what you're spending your time doing, you're not building trust. You're being a lackey. You're having an extra pair of hands because the teacher needs a para or somebody in their class. That's not it. It's doing the work together. Now, again, if you want to ask anything, just type. Somebody asked about, this is being recorded and you will have access to it. So you can watch it at any time you want. I think it'll be up for like 30 days or something. So feel free to do that, and we'll send you a way of knowing how to access it. Okay, now for this. Trust and communication go hand in hand. 99 times out of 100, the problem started in a miscommunication, a lack of communication, or a kind of communication that caused hard feelings of some kind. Coaches have to become expert at communicating with people. And you did some work in the summer, but I think it might be worth just revisiting it shortly and then thinking about any issue you have. And from where I'm going with this, we'll add a little bit to what you got in the summer. And if anybody wants, I'll do a role play with you. So if you have a real situation that you don't know how to handle, you can tell me the situation and we'll role play it. And I'll be you and you be the teacher or something like that. Okay, so first, what are your patterns? Like, I'm an interrupter. I'm an extrovert. I talk a lot. I think out loud. Those are my patterns, or some of my patterns. And then I can articulate what's hard for me with some people. Like, they don't get to the point, or I can't follow their logic, or they seem to always disagree no matter what, stuff like that. So while you're thinking about that now, we're going to do a little bit of communication work. You probably saw something like this slide, or maybe this slide in the summer. Conflict is a natural thing. It happens all the time. It happens out of complexity, diversity, and interdependence, right? So conflict's not a bad thing. It just is. We don't see the world in the same way. Our realities are different. The way we see the world is different. I'm different from James. James is different from the next person, and on it goes. So to act as if your reality is a problem. The better stance is to be more curious. So you don't have to agree with people. Stop worrying about whether everybody agrees, whether everybody's on the same page. No, but people are just not on the same page. So get over it, right? That's my thinking. Get over it. That's not the goal, to get everybody on the same page. I don't even know what that means, because it tends to lead toward uniformity, and I don't want to even get into that. But okay, so what do we want? We want to actually bring the conflicts to the surface, so we want to expose where the paradoxes are, where the dilemmas are. How do we get things out in the open? And then how skillful can we be in talking about them? So I believe it was Einstein, but it may have been someone else. He said, the sign of real, true intelligence is to be able to hold to hold a paradox in your hand, like a right and a wrong, or good and a bad, or whatever, to hold these two things in your hand simultaneously and think about them sort of together in a way, or to allow them to both exist at the same time. So if you think about the paradoxes we face in school, we want individualized teaching, but we have groups of 25 or 30 kids. We want teachers to take their time and go deeper, but we want them to follow a pacing calendar and be on the same page as somebody else down the street or down the hall, right? I mean, we have so many paradoxes that we're holding. There's this tension between things that we're trying to hold simultaneously, and it's very difficult. Neither one is right or wrong. Of course, you have to move along to some degree. And wouldn't it be nice if all the kids on the grade level were getting exposed to very similar things and things like that? So I don't know. They create dilemmas. They create tensions. And when we put those tensions on the table and don't pretend they don't exist, we can have richer conversations. So when a teacher says, I don't have time for this, I say, okay, you don't have time for this. Where is your time going? What is it you're focused on? And then we explore that. What do you have time for? Because what you're spending your time on tells you what you value. Not what you say you value, but what you actually spend your time on. That's what you value. Oops, what is going on here? Okay. So let's start to think about, we've noticed the conflict. This teacher believes one thing, we believe another. This teacher wants one thing, we want something else. Whatever the conflict is, what do people normally do? We avoid the conflict because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or because we're afraid we're going to ruffle somebody's feathers, or afraid because we're not really sure if there's going to be an argument. We don't like arguments. Most human beings avoid conflict as like the first thing. I'm not going to get into a conflict. We handle them poorly. Like somebody speaks to us in a way we don't like and we don't speak up. Or we get aggressive and we try to like coerce people to do things. But we want buy-in. That's a kind of coercion. Or we handle them well. We find a way to address them well. Now, you probably remember some of this from the summer. So I'm just taking it a little bit further. We want to address them well. So what do? If we're avoiding, we do these kinds of things. I'm not going to read these out loud. But we do all these kinds of things, which basically perpetuate and exacerbate the problem. And they cause us to tell ourselves stories that we assume to be true. And then we act on those assumptions when they're not really true. They're a story we're telling ourselves. So that's one, that's the avoidance. And then we do aggressive type things. We speak louder, we speak more often, we try to get people to do our things. We think we know what somebody else is going to say, we interrupt them. That's one of my best patterns. That's one thing I do too often and keep trying to get better at. We overstate, like we're very sure that this is the way it has to be. And that you're not thinking of all the whatever else we're thinking about. We say that's a stupid idea. I mean, some people actually say that. That's a really stupid idea. That's not going to help. We try to debate, which doesn't help. And sometimes people actually insult or threaten each other. So none of that is useful. The question is, what is useful and how do we engage in a way that we resolve the issue in a way that both parties walk away feeling like, okay, I get it. I feel pretty good about this. I may not have gotten 100% of what I want, but I think we're now clear. That's what I'm trying to always look for. Like, what are the possibilities I'm not thinking about? What do I have to do to explore with the other person these possibilities? And you probably saw this, but I truly believe this. Like, my 100% most important thing is like, how do I keep improving in communication within my organization, with people on the team, with others outside, that for whatever's happening, good, better, and different. The communication loops are often the biggest problem in systems actually working well. every time I study a school or a system, or even metamorphosis where we end up having problems, there's some communication feedback loop that's not in place or didn't get played out. So coaching requires a lot of feedback loops to the principal, feedback loops to the teacher, feedback loops with another colleague if you're working on something that has to do with coaching. You're constantly working to improve your communication and to address directly and skillfully the issues that come up. Okay. Role play. Great. We got a role play request. I love it. Let's do it. So James, help.
So Katisha will have to read. Katisha.
Okay, Katisha, we're giving you access. You have to put your video and your microphone on. You have to click those two icons. So right now your mic isn't on. Is muted. You have to press it so it's unmuted. Bottom left of the screen, you'll see a little microphone with a red line through it. Click it. And then the same with the video camera. You'll see a camera, click that. There you go, now you're cooking. Okay, so, all right, so now I can see you. Can you see me? Move your screen just so, there you go, perfect. So you're gonna describe the situation, and then you're gonna play the person that you have difficulty communicating with, and I'm gonna be you. Okay? I can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, good.
Okay, so here's the situation. I will be playing the role of an experienced coach, school-based coach. A school performs very well when you're looking at MCAS data. You are coming in, you're new. I really don't want your opinion.
So you're a coach who already lives there, mm-hmm. and you're new, and you personally are the new coach, yes. who has joined the team recently. Is that right?
Yes.
But this senior coach doesn't really want to work with you. Is that right? Does she want to work with you, or she just doesn't want you to she wants to be like the wise one or something, as opposed to you? Like, what do you think's going on is, I guess, my question. When you think about it, what's your story?
I honestly don't think that some of the issues has to do with me.
That's good, because you're not taking it personally.
No, but right now, I mean, the openness, there's no openness at all.
And so what do you, in other words, can you like give me an example of something that might have happened or something so I can come into the role play where we have something to clean up? So just like, give me a hint of like, you went to her to talk about something and she wasn't open, or you never meet, or you want, like, what is it you want that she's not doing?
I would like an open relationship where I could come in, we can have conversations, be thought partners.
Okay.
Visit teachers together.
See teachers together. And right now you're seeing them separately and you're not communicating.
Well, I'm very new in my position and I need to work with various school-based coaches.
So what's your position? Are you a coach?
I am a district coach.
A district coach working with school-based coaches.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, so you're coming in. I'll be you. You be that person.
Sure.
And just what's your name again? What's her name?
Katisha.
Katisha. Okay. Katisha. Yeah. Hi. I'm in the school today, and I was wondering if we could have a little chat. I would really love to talk to you. Can we talk for a few minutes?
For a few minutes? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think it'll just take a few minutes. I'm really interested in getting to know you better and trying to understand what you do in the school and what you think is working, because I'm new at this and you're a senior person. You've been doing this a while. So I don't want to step on your toes, and I would like to learn with you. So I'm wondering if you would be open to some kind of conversation together that we could maybe explore some things.
What would you like to explore?
Well, I like to understand how you coach and like how you know what to do with a teacher, what you think about. That would be one thing. I'd like to maybe look at a lesson with you, maybe sit in on a coaching session or something. I don't know what you would feel comfortable with. Maybe we could go into a teacher's classroom and you could, we could watch somebody teach for 10 minutes together and talk about what we saw. Anything to help me understand the work that you're doing, because obviously, you're doing a good job and I'm new at it.
Okay, well, I can tell you what we do. We can visit a few classrooms, but I already know what I'm going to focus on, and I could share that with you.
That would be wonderful to tell me what you're going to focus on and maybe why you chose that, and so forth and so on. I think I'm here to learn and to be of support to other teachers that maybe you're not working with. So I would like us to be aligned. I don't want to, so what do you think?
I can send you an email later.
Okay, and do you have a time and a teacher we could meet, we could watch together? You have somebody in mind?
I'll check the schedule and I'll get back to you.
Okay, will you be getting back to me today or within the week, or so I can plan my schedule?
I'll try to send you something by Monday.
Okay, and then can we find a time next week to get together? And you tell me, I'll make my schedule available to you.
Okay, sure. I'll include that in the email.
So next Monday, you'll send me an email with when I can come and visit, and with a teacher, what your plan is, what you plan to do, and what you're inviting me to be part of. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to learning with you.
Okay, thanks.
Cut. So what did you think there, Katisha?
I think you did a good job of holding me accountable, of following up and making sure that I did make some sort of a commitment. So I would have to follow up with the email and getting that information to you.
Yeah, and it depends on the person, but I might even send an email right after that conversation and say, thank you so much for talking to me. I look forward to getting your email on Monday, giving me yada, 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 whatever it was we agreed to. Yeah. So that accountability piece is often what's missing in real life. We don't say time, place, date, who, what, when. You know what I mean? So when you kind of find that opening, you got to nail it. And obviously, I'm using humility in that. My strategy there was, you know more than I do. That's your attitude. Like what I see is you think you know more than I do. You may. I do have stuff to learn. So let's do it. It's not, I don't think it's personal. I think it's like, okay, it may be she has judgments about young people coming in when they should be still teaching, or she might have judgments about this is our school, why is the district here? Who knows what's going on? But you're not going to find that out until you develop a little bit of a relationship. Mm-hmm. And you honor what she's doing, but don't like bullshit. Like there's no BS here. You're truthful. Like I always asking permission. Like, can I ask you a question? You said you were working on X and then you did Y, whatever it was. Could you help me? Like, I want to understand that. What was that move about? Where did you think it went well, or did it go off anywhere? Like, you have to inch your way into a candid, truthful conversation. Mm-hmm. And then invite her to come and watch one of your sessions, or even invite her to help you plan a session, like whatever that allows the connection to happen. So you kind of, you work from a place of humility. It's hard. It's like humble pie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's what it is.
I do wonder how the line of questioning would be received.
Well, you have to always ask permission, ask a question. You test the waters. She might get defensive, and then you say, oh, it seems like that question irritated you or bothered you. Could you help me understand why? Or it's like, it's a little bit of a dance until at some point you're going to win her over. It's, are you willing to do the dance to get there, to get to the finale? Like, now we get along and we understand each other. I'll give you a quick example. I was working with coaches actually in Massachusetts. I forget which district, but I was in Massachusetts, and one of these coaches was like maybe first or second year coach. And there was a teacher who was the union representative, senior, outspoken, didn't like this, didn't like the math, didn't like blah, blah, blah. So, but she told me that she had been a math teacher. The coach told me that this other teacher had been a math teacher. And she happened to be in one of my workshops that I was doing with teachers and coaches that day. So I asked the coach to point out who she was. And I kind of spent a little time trying to, ferret out what she was about. And I just said, oh, you used to be a math teacher. You must have some opinions about what's going on and some thoughts about this and that. And invited her into the conversation. And her opinions were pretty contrary to mine, right? But we opened the door. And I think I invited her I forget what I invited her to do. But the next time the coach met with her, she did something similar. And before we knew it, that union rep who was causing all kinds of issues was now on our side. She had to feel, I think, that she was respected, that she had a knowledge base, that we were not, we didn't think we were smarter or better or whatever than she was. And that was her stuff. It wasn't ours. But we had to play that game, which I call everything a game. So I'm not talking about being manipulative. I'm talking about like finding that entry point. That's not easy sometimes.
No, it's not.
But that's the work. Anything you want to say to end?
Not right now.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was fun. I love role plays. Okay. I think that we are going to bring things pretty much to a close. So I noticed that a couple of people had to leave. So let me just get back to the PowerPoint. What do we do? Okay. Somebody else a panelist?
No, me.
Oh, okay. All right. So how do I get rid of this? Okay, so just to summarize this, what I call crucial conversations. If you have never read the book, there's two books. One is called Crucial Conversations, and the second one is called Crucial Accountability. I highly recommend the book. This model that I'm sharing with you and a lot of the ideas that I've been sharing come from that work. The reason I suggest Crucial Accountability over Crucial Conversations is because they really kind of lay out the Crucial Conversation stuff again and take it further. So you kind of could skip the first book. But here's the deal. And this is what we just did with the Katisha. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. Okay. Before I got the story, right? But what was I doing in my own mind? What was I trying to do? Is I was clear in my mind that I wanted to find a connection to this person. I wanted to get past whatever I was seeing as a barrier. So in order to do that, I had to be as neutral as I could and start with heart. Start with like, What do I think might be true that I could say genuinely and believe in? And leave my stories on the side. Now, in this case, I didn't check out my stories because we weren't at that place. What Katisha told me that she wanted is what I worked on. So what we did during the talk was create safety, right? And started to look for shared mutual purpose or shared meaning. So what did she want? What did I want? What did she think could work? We're looking for ways to explore each other's paths, to find a way in, to create the first step of the journey together. And then we move to action. When is it going to happen? Who's doing what? What are we doing? How are we following up? Blah, 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 like that. So if you wanted to summarize that conversation in just a few points, that's what the map looks like. But each one of these parts has a set of skills. And that, I suggest you read the book or you go back to our communication chapter and reread that. I'll end with a few tips. Create and maintain safety. That's critical. The second you see that somebody's getting uptight or, whatever, you gotta go back and recreate the safety. You gotta be sensitive and tuned in. Listen to understand. Do not start with your own ideas, your own suggestions, your own goals. Invite the other person to tell you whatever they care about, whatever they want to do, whatever they think. And then if you notice an issue, like for example, let's pretend that these two people that just had this role play meet on Monday or whatever day and they go do their thing, there's still going to be friction between them. At some point, we have to name and try and unpack whatever the underlying issue is. Because if you don't go at the underlying issue, you're going to end up having either stop having conversations or keep having similar conversations over and over, and you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to, at some point, and hopefully sooner rather than later in a relationship, put what you perceive as the issue on the table. And then what you do at that point is you go back here and you start to gather information from the other person. So you tell your story, they tell their story, you try and explain how you got there, whatever it is, so that you can move forward. When I'm in a conversation where it's tricky, I try to take some verbatim notes, not of everything, but of something a person says that puzzles me or worries me or presses the button or something. And then I paraphrase, because first I have to make sure, did I hear you right? Is this what you're saying? And sometimes when you do that, the person really didn't mean to say whatever it is you think they said. They meant to say something different. So it gives them a chance to clear that up. But maybe they did say what you heard. And when you paraphrase, then they say, yes, that's what I said. And at that point, now you have an opening to explore that belief. And it's tricky because when you start working with people's belief systems, they can get defensive. So sometimes just paraphrasing it and asking them, is that what you really meant, helps them say, well, now that I hear myself saying that, I'm not sure I believe that. But sometimes they dig in their heels and they say, yes, this kid can't, blah, 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 right? Okay, so then you have to start to play a little differently. So I hear you. You think Johnny can't do X, whatever. So let me just try a hypothetical. What if we did this? What do you think would happen? And what's your evidence? And you just play around a little bit. You poke around. If you disagree with the person, you have to then say, let's pretend the teacher says, I have to keep up with the pacing calendar. And you don't think that's 100% true. You could say, I hear what you're saying. You believe that it's important to have a pretty good pace. And I also believe that it's important that kids learn while we're teaching. So now you haven't told that other person that they're wrong. You have made the issue more complex. You have added a level of complexity that kind of opens space to think about it. There's that tension I'm talking about. So now you can think about it together. And then if there has been a conflict and things haven't been working out, you have to talk about the impact of actions. So I came to visit you. We made an agreement that you would meet me at 2:15 for a debrief. I came, I sat till 2:30. You didn't show up, or you showed up at 2:40, whatever. We really need to talk about that, because the impact is I didn't get work done that I need to get done. I was late for my family. And really all it would have taken was a text to tell me you weren't coming. Like, the impact of what you did affected me. It affected the company. For example, we made a decision the other day to cancel some workshops, and it affected a lot of issues, other things, raised a few issues in the company because other people were impacted by that. And the people who made the decision weren't so aware of what the impacts were. So it's really talk about it and put the impact on the table. I'm not going to do the rest of this because we don't have time. So I don't know about you, but I thought that was, I enjoyed that. I'm glad we had a few people speak up. I'm glad you asked questions. I had fun doing a role play, and I wish you all the best in your work as a coach. It's complex and it takes time to get better and to get clearer. And there'll be 2 more webinars. Tony and Ann will be conducting those, and you'll be getting emails to remind you of when they are. We will also send you an email, either we will or Leslie will, saying how you can access this video, and I will also send a couple of articles with it, so you can have further reading. Have a wonderful school year, and have a lot of fun. Don't let it get you down. Okay, take care. Bye.